Okay,
Okay.
so it's glad to welcome you once again to this edition of the Blaze Construction series. Yeah, today will be quite an interesting session because unlike the previous session, today is more like a debate. We basically brought up a question which is talking about big tech, digital construction, IoT, and smart buildings with over reliance on green tech, erode design autonomy. So this is a question, and I have in the house today architect Peter Odoh, who will more or less be defending the construction sector as regards this question, and I will be defending the IT sector because we are talking about is infiltrating into the build sector. So before I get started, of course, my name is Onyema Udeze, and I'm the co-founder of Blaze Inc. And this is a bi-weekly session that we normally have. Every two weeks, we'll feature interviews from thought leaders in the build sector. So today I have in the house architect Peter Odoh, who is a registered architect with the Architects Registration Council of Nigeria, ACON. He's also a seasoned architect, a free thinker, and the current managing director of OpenMZ Beam Limited, based in Nigeria. So he's the founder and the proprietor of OpenMZ Beam, where he works with a team to build modern architectural ideas and projects. He's also a lecturer at the Department of Architecture, University of Nigeria, in Nsukka, where he tutors and mentors students for the future design industry. So generally has a passion for the adoption of modern work tools and methods industry. So it's a pleasure to welcome Peter Odoh today. So architect Peter, how are you doing today?
I'm okay. It's great to see you again, and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, you're very much welcome. So as I said, we'll be discussing the question how green tech is affecting the build sector today, how that is actually eroding design autonomy. So before we start, I'd like to ask, a lot of people today by design autonomy. So this is quite a deep question. Could you just tell us a bit more about what you mean by design autonomy and how we are beginning to lose it in the build sector?
Okay. Thank you for the wonderful introduction.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, very briefly, when we talk about design autonomy, let's just talk about autonomy first. Autonomy means the ability to self-govern or self-decide what you want to do. So when we talk about design autonomy, we are talking about the ability of an architect to be wholly free to create his building according to the client's needs with his artistic and creative capabilities. So that's just a brief summary of what design autonomy is. The fact that architects can design and entirely coordinate the built environment. So the second aspect of your question says, how are we losing design autonomy with respect to smart construction or green technology and all the rest? Now,
yes,
the architects are not very conscious of this encroachment, but it's an encroachment that is coming at a very rapid state, in the sense that digital construction, big tech, computer-driven enthusiasts are rushing into the build sector to sort of convert the finished product into almost like a technological product, sort of how cars are being produced or mass produced. So how we are losing our design autonomy comes in the fact that if we streamline all our design solution to just go into producing very efficient, clean buildings, in the near future, you'll find out that with technology, we can reach a point where the most effective way to construct a building would have been produced by all the data we have, and may make the architects less relevant. Or let's say the way Autodesk has a software that can generate design options. Although it still gives the architect ability to adjust those options. But imagine when the options generated for you and generated for me are almost same thing because our parameters that we put in are almost the same thing. So we we must first of all not forget the reason why buildings are built. Buildings are built for the comfort and the use of human beings, not because of the environment. We, and
Sure.
so if architects can keep reminding anybody that is coming into the build sector that the reason why we design buildings is not just to make the building energy efficient. That is maybe the secondary purposes of building design. The primary purpose of building design is for the use and comfort of the humans in it and to satisfy the need why the building was produced. So
Okay.
that's
Yeah,
just the
so I
basic first.
I completely understand what you're driving at. So, but I believe that the essence of these tools as well is to, to aid human beings. That's why even when CAD came out, it was called computer aided design. So basically, computer is aiding us to. So basically, while we are leveraging this technology and software, we shouldn't lose. I mean, we shouldn't lose our creativity as architects. I mean, ability to still be able to conceptualize our designs and I tailor it towards the end users at the end of the day. So quite that one is quite pretty straightforward in terms of understanding what design autonomy is. So now going deeper into the topic of the day, which is talking about IoT, smart buildings, and all that. What do you understand about smart buildings and the role of big tech and IoT in these smart buildings? So I haven't
Okay.
clarified on design autonomy. Yeah.
Yeah. The second question is you just asked like a continuation of the first.
Yes.
For me personally, smart buildings are buildings that leverage existing technologies and data to perform efficiently, especially with regards to energy conservation and human comfort. So smart buildings are actually a step in the right direction. I don't have any much grievance against smart buildings. The way I have grievance with is how do we make our buildings smart?
Yeah.
So let's start from let's go back to, let's just rewind a little bit to how architects design. Now, if the whole concept of smart building and Internet of Things and digital construction, whenever you see an advert for them, what you see a machine laying blocks, or you see someone saying that this building was built in 3 hours using a machine, and so therefore we can build 1 million buildings using machines. And for me, that's a very wrong way to start to look at the future of the construction industry. Because the reason is this: um, if we start designing and building with machines, you limit the creativity of every architect to the extent to which the equipment as at that period could could create things. Now I know that we have 3D digital printing and the rest of it, but there are so many complex elements, especially when it comes to providing of residential houses, that you don't want the guy in your village to be dependent on a technology that is made in, let's say, Germany, for example, just because you want to make smart buildings. And the fact of it is that if you look at it holistically, we are not able, not everybody, not the definition of smart buildings that we have now should, let's say, in the developed world, can still be the same definition of smart buildings in the real world, in the developing world. So you can say smart buildings in the developed world means the use of technology. If you come to Nigeria, you can redefine that. The use of smart buildings in Nigeria could be the fact that we can effectively use our local materials to produce buildings that are both comfortable and eco-friendly, so that we not all of us will be relying on the next invention from Germany or UK or US to build a very small, tiny building. Uh, let's say somewhere in Castina also. So
Yeah,
uh,
and yeah, that's quite true. This is I understand why you're also going, but one of the also major aspects, one of the major important aspects of smart buildings is also the leveraging IoT devices to enhance the user experience. Talking about being able to control the amount of energy buildings are consuming, or being able to control your buildings remotely. I mean, when you are not in your house, you can be able to remotely see the activities going on in the house, and
Oh,
maybe on your
okay.
way back from
So,
work. So
sorry
basically, leveraging
okay,
IoT. So what
sorry
do you have to
to
say
cut you
about?
short. Yes,
Yes.
I'm totally concerned. I don't say against, but I'm very concerned about allowing big tech into the beauty industry. The reason is this, um, especially when it comes to data collection, especially because big tech moves with data, and data is all the business there is today. So when architects are talking about IoT and big tech, I am against big tech in the build sector. The reason is this: if you introduce a lot of technology into your bedroom, let's say, and the technology in your bedroom can actually collect data on how long the light bulb stays on and how many times, sensors on the doors that can regulate the air conditioning. This kind of data can end up in places where you don't want them to end up. So, and that's why I'm very skeptical about introducing such technologies into buildings. I'm okay for design sustainability, but I'm also in for user privacy and autonomy while you are in your building. You want to be sure that every data you generate in your building, especially individual private houses, should remain as privately controlled as possible. If that is possible, it can only be possible. I don't even know how architects can get into that. That's why maybe you can help me with that aspect of it. But
Okay.
that's my concern with regards to it.
Yeah, so from what you're saying, basically you're not against us making our building smart, but you're against the fact that we are leaving it out to external parties to handle that for us, which I actually believe that it is a problem that kind of comes out from the industry. It starts with the way we even design buildings to start with. Typically when you go into a building, you want to deliver a building, even from the contract, the way the initiation of that project starts, where you have to first of all, the consultant will first of all design, perhaps in silos or collaboratively, and then they now hand it over to the contractors. So you see that when you compare our industry with other industries, you see that there is a very high level of disintegration. And that, so even if you have it's not as if today you have the AV industry, the audiovisual industry, or the system integration industry that integrates technology systems into building. But a lot of times, see that these guys are not they are not an integral part of the design process. After the designers, the consultants have done the designs, a lot of times, perhaps it's even the contractor or the client himself that bring these guys and say, you know what, I want to make my building luxurious. So it's because of that gap that we have in the industry. There are needs that these clients have that the core professionals in the industry are not meeting for them. And then the tech giants, the likes of Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, they have identified that gap in the industry. They understand the fact, I mean, we spend up to 90% of our lives in buildings, and they understand the fact that we need to be comfortable in these buildings. We need to be able to enjoy ourselves, entertain ourselves. So this is what is beginning to bring about all these solutions you are seeing today. Today, you can have Google Assistant or Home Assistant in your house. You just issue a voice command and it can do things. You're outside of your building, you're able to monitor the activities ongoing in your building. Some people have children and they have maids. They don't know if the maid is maltreating a child or something like that. They want to be able to, with some sensors or cameras in the house, they want to be able to monitor the activities in the house. So, like you said, maybe you might not know how architects will go into, but that's basically where the problem comes in. We as professionals, we are leaving this thing out to the IT guys. When we design buildings, we are not thinking about the user experience a lot of times. A typical architect is thinking about, even when we talk about functionality is basically talking about how the ante room leads to the living room, how the living room leads to the kitchen, how the kitchen leads to the bedroom and whatnot. That's functionality to a typical architect. But if you are talking about an iPhone, for example, now, the user experience is basically monitoring how you're actually reacting to everything that goes on that phone. It's tracking all those things, analyzing those things, and that is how they improve. We as professionals, how do we improve on these things? I mean, how do you really, today when I was in school, we did a course called post occupancy evaluation. Post occupancy evaluation mostly is after the building has been designed. What exactly are we learning from these things to influence the future designs we are doing? We don't have all these things in place, and it's very hard for us to improve. I mean, the likes of Facebook, Google, they're just barely more than 20 years old. but they've been able to perfect their industry because they're analyzing everything. And because we don't have that in our industry, it becomes a huge market. At the end of the day, it's just a
Okay,
market.
okay. I want to ask you a question just very quickly. Will you be
Yes,
comfortable? I agree with what you're saying in terms of improving our our products, our output,
yes,
and
yes,
I'm all for it, whichever way we can evaluate. My
yes,
issue with Internet of Things, especially connecting everything in your house,
yes,
my issue is with the extent to which
yes,
I see it going. Unfortunately,
yeah.
the extent I see
Okay.
it going is very it will get to a point where there will be enough data to program your life. Let me just put it that way. Will you be comfortable having a sensor in your bedroom? Any sensor at all? Maybe even if it's a
Uh,
light sensor.
Yes, I completely understand what they're saying. So me, I'm not supporting the fact that IT guys are coming into our industry to do what we're supposed to do. I'm only saying that we as professionals are not doing that. And this is even
Okay.
the bigger part is that it will get to a point where we cannot even compete because these guys, if you're talking about financial capability or financial capacity, we cannot even compete. I mean, we are talking about companies that are worth over $2 trillion. Apple today is worth over $2 trillion. Microsoft is almost $2 trillion. Facebook is about $1 trillion. So if we really want to compete, okay, we suddenly wake up and say, you know what, we want to take these things into our hand. We want to be able to compete with this guy. How do we even compete? So it's actually an onus on us that it's because we're not delivering buildings that are intelligent. That's why they're not coming in to make it intelligent for us. If as professionals we are designing closely with the systems integrators, for example, or the AV industry. And when you're designing your plan of a house, you're thinking of all the cabling that will go through this. You don't have to use an Apple Siri or whatever to control your house. You can actually run cables through your house, and those things will be hardwired into your house. The same way you run your electrical wiring in your house, you can run cables that connect all the stuff in your house, and these things can now, feed into a building management system or a facility management system. So is because as an industry we're not innovative enough, we're not innovating big enough. That's why they're coming in to solve. It's a problem for the industry, for the end users. As human beings, today all of us tuning into this session, we are all in our houses. I mean, we want to improve the way we experience these buildings, and we as professionals we are not doing it enough. So it's a market. At the end of the day, it's business. It has created it. Whenever I have a problem, you must have a solution. So we don't have the solution, and then they've come in to provide the solutions, and we are not even conscious of it. We are also leaving it out to these guys to do it for us. And to make it worse, we cannot even compete in the long run with these guys because so basically, I think that's also what now leads to the basically we're able to identify the negative impacts of this green tech on design autonomy and how it's impacting our industry. So basically, the next thing now is what do you now see as a way forward to curtail the negative impacts? I mean, you also at least for in discussion, you've seen negative impacts. What do you see? Maybe for your own suggestion, what do you see as the
Uh,
as the way forward? As a way
first,
forward to curtail negative impacts of the green tech on both design autonomy without losing the promising advantages of green tech as well.
first of all, the issue now is, why we are talking about smart buildings and why
Yes,
we are talking about Internet of Things and digital technology. One of the main reasons here is sustainability and green technology. And that
yes,
is, and unfortunately, I think in our case, especially with the recent promotion I've been seeing about what is called, um, let's say, efficient smart technologies, and these things have fed us from developed countries because our context is different. So a lot of us think that green technology always has to do with something that has to do with technology itself. Like maybe you need to use solar cells. You need to impute sensors in your building. In Nigeria, for example, when you are trying to give people an idea of what efficient green technology is, um, we seem, or you ask some people, they seem not to get it. Let me give an example. The basic and most functional architects in the world, I used to say it, are Nigerians. And the reason is because we don't have consistent power supply. So all Nigerian buildings are always passive buildings. They are always green buildings. They will pass for a lot of things. If you go for approval in the major cities in Nigeria, let's say Abuja, for example, Lagos, and you don't have cross ventilation in your major rooms, that building may not even pass approval. That's what they look out for. So you discover that we are already, and then they check for setbacks and some things like that. Although architects always falsify some things like that, but you discover that in our own case, we are working towards sustainable buildings with regards to the needs of our peculiar environment. If you fit a building with sensors in Nigeria and a lot of digital equipment, the way Nigeria is presently structured, that building will cost more to maintain than a building that is just designed to take advantage of the environment. So I think we as architects, especially when we organize seminars and we organize um, uh, uh, any gathering that will enable us to develop the industry, we should actually begin to see how we can introduce technology to calculate in very with little margins of error how we can harness our uh, physical environment and then use it properly. Let's say you want to introduce solar shading in a high-rise building, instead of going towards applying sensors to monitor the ACs, something of that nature, especially if you
Yeah,
are designing public
understand.
buildings. So I think we
This
should have, okay, I think we should have a
no
different
continue.
approach. I think we should have a different approach towards green technology, especially in developing world, especially those countries that don't have consistent power supply. We should actually see how we can reduce reliance and dependence on technology we can't produce and begin to, as architects, to work from technology we can produce and then integrate those we can't produce in a sustainable manner. In a very, like, if you have not positioned your ventilation through design properly, don't start talking about placing ACs that will on and off when people come in. Why not do the ones you can do so that when you want to place an air conditioner, at least it's supporting your design essence in the beginning. So I think that's where
Yeah,
we should just redesign green tech from.
yeah, I completely understand because well, in Nigeria, for example, we still have we still have enough spaces more or less. You cannot compare Nigeria with places like New York or Tokyo and the likes, where they have very little amount of land. They have to use technology to maximize. So basically, from what you're saying, it has to do with leveraging the natural features as much as possible, and then complementing it with technology, which is quite understandable. But the truth of the matter is the fact that as professionals ourselves, we should also put all these things as much as possible into consideration right from the design stage of the facility, because a lot of these things will add on buildings to make it more sustainable in the long run. A lot of them take place after the design process, or some of them even after the construction process. A
That's
client today
true.
might a client today might travel to Las Vegas or wherever and see a very fine looking um smart home kit. You just bring it into his house and you say this building is smart now. You can begin to issue voice assistance to the device. And so, but if as professionals we'll be able to think more creatively during design and we'll begin to innovate more. So I think that's a good way forward. But like you said, it's important to at least maximize the nature as much as possible. I mean, if naturally you have ventilation in your building, the building might not be consuming so much energy to start with, for you to now say you want to use technology to reduce the amount of energy consumption. And then maybe if the building, you've already thought about all the setbacks and whatnot, maybe the security might be enhanced. But basically, I think the point here is we as professionals need to now begin to see this as our responsibility as well. Even if we don't design these things, at least during the design, we should be able to collaborate more with the specialists in this field. Because personally, I've worked when I left school. The first place I worked was a home automation company. They do systems integration, and I know that the way they work is that they receive finished designs from the consultants, and a lot of times the request even comes from the architects. I mean, from the clients. So they receive print designs from the consultants, and then they will now begin to look at how to integrate technology into it. So they are not even communicating with the consultants in the first place. A lot of time they are answering directly to the clients because the client wants to make his building luxurious. Maybe the client has a lot of money and he wants to enjoy luxury in his house. So it's if as professionals we see it as our responsibility right from the design stage, then I believe that will also help to salvage one of the situations that are looking almost
Yeah,
like.
I agree with you on that aspect that we as professionals we need to get involved in all the ways that we can make our buildings smart. And we should also try as much as we can to be the ones that design the the extent to which technologies can be introduced into buildings. The reason is because
Yes,
the home, especially private buildings, is a very autonomous space. Somebody's house must be kept as private as possible. So even if you want to collect data, for example, from residential house owners, we should be such a way that those technologies can be devoid of big tech so that you
yes,
know
I understand.
when architects make recommendations for the installations to be made within a home, the homeowner should be able to, at the end of the day, have that data within his or her home and be at liberty to contribute such data to be used for any optimization in the future. But the way things are
Yeah,
going, it's not seeming that way. It's like in the future, architects will just be adding Siri and any Apple device anywhere we want to add. And you tell
yeah,
the homeowner, your home is smart. And so my concern here is with both the design autonomy of the architect, because one day, if you consume enough data to artificial intelligence, they can actually just millions can spot up from computers that are the most perfect replica for, let's say, energy efficient designs in, let's say, sub-Saharan Africa. But that's not how architecture works, because the clients are always different. So when we are talking
yeah,
about smart buildings, I think we should always limit it to not that the fact that technology will start building all our buildings, but that
yes.
architects should rise up to the occasion of making their buildings much more in tune with technology in such a way that it doesn't encroach privacy.
Yes, and that is, if you also look at it, you see that a typical architect is not even thinking of the management or the operations phase of the building that he's designing. Because, okay, let me even use an example. I like to use the telecom industry as an example. When you buy an
Yeah.
iPhone now from Apple, in fact, Apple makes more money after you purchase that phone than how much you bought that phone. And that's because you keep upgrading almost everything in that, both the hardware, both the software, the firmware, everything in that. They are completely in charge of the entire life cycle of that phone. Till you change that phone, Apple is still in charge of whatever you're doing on that phone. So as a professional, we are not even thinking of how these users, if you are thinking of the maintenance of, okay, like for example, had companies like Atera that came up, and unfortunately they had some issues recently. These are companies that are already thinking of buildings as a solution, not necessarily a product that you just deliver and get away with. Because if we are thinking as professionals, we are thinking of the facility management of these facilities, we're able to at least take charge of the facility management or FMS solutions or the BMS solutions that are going to these facilities. And that is where we can also have the users of these facilities have input or say into how their data is being used. For example, today we have a company called Siemens, and Siemens, they also have some solutions that aids in that regard, where you integrate technology that helps to manage facilities. So these are kind of solutions that are not necessarily big tech. I mean, not too far away like Apple, Facebook, and the likes. They are still tech enabled, but at least the owners or the designers of that building can now leverage those. They have what is called MindSphere, for example. MindSphere is like an open source platform that it can begin to integrate all these IoT devices. But in this case, at least it's properly designed, and the architects are aware of how these things communicate. And at the end of the day, the communication ends on the FMS solution. Yes, it might be cloud based, it might be a cloud based solution, but at least it's contained within a facility management solution, and not necessarily the fact that it lies in one Apple server or Facebook server in UK somewhere or US, whatever. But at least contained within the facility management solution or the building even the building management solution is a local solution that can access within the house. So these are the kind of solutions that, if as professionals we are beginning to think this way, we are beginning to take charge of what we are delivering. Even the energy consumption of these facilities, it will reduce, because a lot of times why building consume so much energy is because you're not even so much you think of the money you are paid to do the design, and once you are paid as a consultant to design a house, chicken, now you hand it over to the contractor. The contractor too will think of how to make his money to construct the house, hand over to the clients. Then the clients, I don't know, they see that buildings, you spend as much as 90% of the money during the maintenance of that building. That's because people that design it, they're not concerned about how you use that facility. So I think that's basically quite clear. So which now leads me to the last question I have before we also look at some other things. So now you're lecturing in one of the top universities in Nigeria. What role do you see the tertiary institutions playing in preparing the students for the massive digital transformation in the build sector? I mean, today we are complaining that tech is coming into the build sector. They are beginning to, what role do you see the tertiary institutions or even regulatory bodies or whoever it is to prepare the students for the market or the industry ahead of them?
What we've been discussing since, I think this last question is most pertinent because it depends on how you train the architects. That's how they are going to practice in the field. So right now in most universities in Nigeria, the adoption of technology into the curriculum has not been encouraged, especially when it comes to producing the final product. So let me say in a university, like my university, we could be teaching computer-aided designs to the students. We could be teaching AutoCAD, Revit, and then but when they come to present their works and do their designs, the design still goes back as if none of that was implemented. Most times in the undergraduate level, they design using pencil and ink till date. In the postgraduate level, we design with computers. But when you see the presentation of the jury, this kind of questions about how efficient and effective the design solutions are, uh, leveraging the technologies that they were able to use while producing the design, it's not asked and it's not even presented by the student. So the tertiary institutions have a lot to do. First of all, I advise them, or advise myself because I'm part of.
Okay.
That we should integrate, especially let's say design technologies. Let's start with CAD and BIM into the design process, starting from like the earliest years in design. And secondly, we should in the master's level, let's say so, students should be able to produce sustainable design solutions that can be proved empirically through data using these technologies. So let me give an example. If you are producing, if you say a building is well ventilated, the building, your design solution you are producing. Did you carry out a solar analysis? Because you can actually carry out both the sun and wind analysis on the building to see whether the building is properly shaded, whether the positioning of these are solutions that can be as detailed as possible because you have the technology to carry out such analysis if you leverage the technologies properly. And then can you show details in 3Ds, like so that it's not just the 2D drawings that you have. You can leverage your sections, produce axonometric views, produce a lot of convincing details. So there should be a need for the tertiary institution to demand that from the students, because the students, they won't outwork what they are given. Most students will only work within the parameters. And I think finally that the regulatory bodies like ACON and NUC should make uh, technology an integral part of the architectural profession. A lot of the old lecturers, they still believe, I won't say old lecturers, but a lot of lecturers, they still believe that students should draw because it is important for architects to draw. I'm not against that, but there is no architectural firm now that produces drawings in pencil, paper, or ink. I don't
Yes,
know if you know
definitely.
of any, but there is none.
No.
I don't even know if such a drawing in ink will pass approval. You trace your paper. So because these things are archaic, we are training students to have to know how to trace, to buy tracing pen and paper, but they will never use it immediate. In fact, they don't even touch it when they go for internship. So why are we? So I think for the architectural institutions, we need to get smart. We are the ones that need the
Yes.
smart building and Internet of Things more. so that we can
Yes,
implement it ourselves.
I completely agree with you. And funny enough, because of some experience I've had in the past couple of years, I also know that it's not just architects; it has to do with the entire build sector. I mean, I think it was 2 years ago when we had this national roundtable that was organized by Beam Africa and Autodesk, and they brought together all the stakeholders in the build sector in Nigeria: architects, engineers, MEP, structural, quantity surveyors, land surveyors, all of them, both the regulatory bodies, both the academia, both the professionals, all of them, they were in that roundtable discussion. It was a whole day event, and they were brainstorming. Basically, it was on how to integrate BIM into the build sector in Nigeria, even into the academic institution. So, in the course of that discussion, it became obvious that the protocol and the bureaucracy is quite much, and it's not surprising that after that program, the whole thing kind of died out. This 2 years later, there's no communication again on that. Bill Africa, at least some of us will try to follow up, but so basically, you see that both the regulatory bodies, both the academia, the whole process of trying to integrate technology into the curriculum is way too slow, and technology is not waiting for anybody. Personally, I use a lot of software. You are trying to catch up with what is released this year, and before you know it, a new version is out. We are in 2021, but Autodesk 2022.2 or thereabouts is already out. So this is how fast technology moves. So and we are still here talking about drawing board and T square and tracing paper. So this,
Mm,
so honestly, you see that
true.
these are issues that even on a global scale, really, it's not only Nigeria, but just our own is quite. Africa is on another scale, but on a global scale, these are issues where academia is always behind the industry, and so
Yeah.
basically, you need to find a way to fast track these things, because it doesn't make any sense that you go to school, spend all the years in school, spend all the sleepless nights in studio, and then only for you to come out and you're not even employable. A typical
At
Nigerian
all.
a typical Nigerian firm might say I've employed you, but when you now try to compete on a global scale, you realize how backward you are after spending all that money and time. Someone that's even is
It's true what you're saying, and there's a danger to the tertiary institutions because you discover that in the near future they might become irrelevant. Most
yes,
students actually learn a lot, not from what they are taught in class, but from what they learn outside the class while they are in architecture school. So
yes, that's true.
the tertiary institutions actually need to balance, understand, go and collect data from their students and see how to optimize their product. So yeah,
Yeah, I think the message is quite clear. As an industry, we have a lot to do, both from the school, both as professionals. There's a lot of work we need to do because technology is coming for us, and we will not even be able to compete with it. So it's been quite some interesting discussion. Before I round up, I normally like to ask some of these random questions, just to
okay.
go beyond tech. So I have two questions for you here. The first one I have here is, what's your favorite architectural style and why? I mean, as an architect, I'm sure that you might have a style to your architectural design. So, what's your favorite style of architecture and why?
Okay. I My favorite architectural style should be, let me just put it, my favorite architectural buildings collection that I've loved will be the buildings from architects like Drew and Fry, the people that designed most tropical buildings within Nigeria, India during the 1960s and 70s, those architects. And
Okay.
they designed buildings that could, I love buildings that fit into the environment properly with considerations for the environment. So I would prefer very simple buildings. Although I don't get to design it most times because my clients are always asking me for one thing or the other, which you have to satisfy. But my idea of architecture would just be a very efficient building designed to flow with the environment, to respond to the environmental needs without over reliance on technology. I would I would prefer that kind of building.
Okay, definitely I can.
So
I
so
completely
maybe I
agree
don't have
with
a name for that style yet. I don't have a name for the style, but
you.
you can research on designs by Drew and Fry. You can see some of their designs. They did a lot of designs for buildings
Yeah,
within the
I'm sure that
tropical
at least
environment.
vernacular architecture also has a whole lot of, putting
Yeah,
the context into consideration.
sure.
So yeah, that's quite
which
clear.
is lacking nowadays because we are all designing sort of the same kind of buildings nowadays. I don't
Imp-
know with all the
Imposing,
information we have.
yeah, we're imposing a lot of external features into on our buildings.
Yes.
Okay, so one last question before we look at the comments there is, what are your favorite sports? I mean, what's your favorite sports? As, maybe a sports
So
man. I don't
I'm not so much of a sportsman, but I play tennis once in a while, so I'll be
know.
going
Okay.
to go for tennis. So
Okay. All right. So that's great. That's been a great discussion. It's been a pleasure having you share your thoughts
uh,
with us today. So here
thank you
I
so
have
much.
quite, yeah, you're welcome. So I have quite a number of comments coming in, most of them from LinkedIn. So the first
Okay.
one here is from Christopher Ibebule. He said that I don't think green tech necessarily means IoT and sensors alone. Green tech, in this sense, refers to using technology to solve everyday problems. Yeah, yeah. So that's it. That's basically it. So we need to look at these problems. We understand that technology is solving problems, but at least it's for us
Yeah.
to, as professionals, to take ownership of this problem solving and not let the tech industry to come and solve it for us. Because if the problems are not there, they will not see it. They will not provide solutions for it more or less. So I
Mm,
think it's just because we don't innovate enough in the industry. That's why these things are happening. And then Chris also, I think most of the comments are actually from Chris. So he said
okay.
actors are scared of losing design autonomy. Well, why don't we look at it from the angle of taking ownership of the design process by leveraging technology to provide optimal solutions, both passive and active? Yeah, so it's basically the same thing you're saying. And then Christopher Osasana say good comments. I still have another. So basically, if you have any question or any comment, you can also add it. So at least we have some minutes to go. So if you have any comment or question based on what we've been discussing so far, feel free to type it into the comments section. And then Chris
Okay.
also said that another way is using this tech to optimize occupancy comfort. Most designers rely on intuition and years of experience to design. How do you verify if your building functions as designed? How reliable are your solution, either passive or active? There should be reliable data backing your design solutions. Intuitions are no longer enough to deliver architectural solutions. So, yeah, so that's basically it.
Okay. I completely
Yeah,
agree with Chris on that aspect. And if this comment, as he has put it, can be shown to students that are presenting, or that can be shown to any architect. In fact, this is one of the things that puts us back. Yeah. We don't provide empirical data, and we don't even know how to generate empirical data. So somebody can just say this building is functional, or this building is efficient. How? We need to show
there's,
proof, and
there's no
we have
data
enough
to prove it.
technology. Yes, we have enough technology now to do that. So that's one of the right ways to make a building smart, by actually showing that you did your
Yes,
homework.
and that's just the major thing that made the tech industry progress very rapidly because
Yes,
the major reason why they analyze all their data is to improve. The whole data analytics, the whole insights that you get, the whole idea is to improve. It's not necessarily to, when you improve on what you do today, you do better tomorrow. I mean, 20 years ago, there was no Facebook, but today they've been able to harness so much data that people are now shouting that they are using their privacy. Well, all those things is because they're able to analyze the information that they have to
that's
improve
true.
today. So the same with other companies like Google, Amazon, Apple, and the likes. But as an industry,
Yes.
we are one of the oldest, if not the oldest industry. Maybe it's only agriculture that's perhaps older than us. But as long as man existed, there has always been architecture or shelter. So we are one of the oldest industry in the world, and yet we've not even built enough analytics to analyze or to back up our decisions, which is quite an issue. Okay, so yeah,
Okay.
thanks for that one, Chris. So we also have another one from Ifema King. They say, can we have simulator tools help us with this optimizing occupancy comfort? Yes, of course, we have tools. I mean, the only challenge I have with some of these tools actually is that they tend to end at design. I mean, today we have tools like Green Building Studio or Autodesk Insights, and I'm sure that there are more other advanced tools that are tailored more towards sustainable designs. But a lot of times, you see that when you're not constructing that building, is the contractor that will now start deciding the materials that you eventually use. or the client is the person that eventually decides the technology systems that go into that building. So how do we ensure that this analysis we do during design actually translate to reality? If most of the time this design is just to gain approval or to get LED certification that this building is LED certified or whatnot, how do we ensure that these things are translated? And even like Chris mentioned, how do we analyze these things to ensure that this optimization, these simulations actually works in real life, and then we can improve on it? So yes, of course, there are tools that does these things, but a lot of them, the challenge I have with them is that they tend to focus more at design, which of course, if that design is followed through to reality, it will make sense. But most times, the people that even do design are not even there to stand their ground and ensure that all those things are. And at the end of the day, you see that is what happens during construction and operations that matters more than what happens during design. So I don't know if you have anything to say about that, Mr. Peter, Architect Peter.
I think you've done justice to the question. Um, if you have good tools that can simulate human comfort during design, that's a good step. And we have some products already in the market. But if you can also, what you are saying now is if you can also um, have a lot of tools that can monitor your product to ensure that the anticipated result is is what came out at the end. It will also go a long way to help in
Yeah. And
yeah.
even
So
when it comes to the operations phase, they
that
also
is why we have post. Okay,
yeah,
continue.
even when it comes to the operations phase, they also tools. I mean, one of the companies that do a very good job in that is Siemens. They have a lot of tools that also do all these simulations. I mean, trying to analyze how people use buildings. In fact, one of the people that promotes smart buildings most today is Siemens as a company. They have solutions, but you also see that the people that are conversant with these solutions are not the professionals. They are still the tech industry mostly, and these are people that come to after the building have been designed and constructed, they
Yeah,
now begin to impose. So how do
yeah.
we work close? How do we
I
work
think
closely from design?
yes. I think one way we can do this is to create an aspect of architecture, especially within the postgraduate level, that focuses on um, how we can merge technology with architecture. People need to be trained that have architectural background on these technologies. That will
Yes.
enable architects to have a middle ground to convey their ideas through an architect into the tech world. That is very
Yes.
important.
And this is another challenging part, and this is the big what I even see as the biggest threat to the industry is because today you have companies like Amazon, they have all these internship programs that they do. And what they basically do is that they take very young professionals from the industry that don't have any experience, and they because they already understand our industry, but their brain is still very green and they're open to ideas. They just take those guys for internship, and then they extract what they've learned from the industry, and then impose or kind of train them on their own technology. So, and because these guys they are way more financially buoyant than the typical architectural firms or the firms in our industry, you cannot compete. So what can happen in the future is that these guys will just go to schools, look for the brightest minds in schools coming out from our industry, and then they will train them on how to integrate architectural anthropometrics or whatever with all these Amazon Echo, Apple Siri, and all those things. And they create things that are tailored to the users. And now they can back it up with data, they can analyze it. And you now tell me that if you finish from school and you get an offer from Amazon and one architectural firm in
You
Nigeria is
won't
calling
go.
you, you not go. So you see where the issue is coming from. So these guys,
Yeah.
they will solve the industry dry in the long term. So that's where the challenge begins to come in. And
Yeah,
when they're looking for
you are prophesying
no, and this
prophesying doom for the architecture industry.
so this is the challenge. You know where the challenge comes in? Where the challenge comes in is that when these guys are looking for guys, people to employ,
Yeah.
they will not look for the old guys because the old guys already have experience and their mind is already rigid. Their mind is already made up with what their experience. So even the experience becomes their own undoing. They're looking for people that
Okay.
are completely green and they can their brain is still malleable. They can tailor
Okay.
them to the direction they
Yes,
want
I
to go.
agree.
So that's the
Blaze,
biggest issue
I
in the
want to
industry.
ask a question. Do you have
Okay.
plans as an architect to develop technologies that can help buildings become more smart in the future?
Well, we need to be realistic as well. Even it's not about having plans. You also need to look at the ecosystem you're operating. You operate in a
Okay.
very you operate in a very conservative environment. Personally, I do BIM consultancy, and you're talking about something as simple as creating 3D models for companies. It's not like they don't understand the usefulness of creating a 3D model and the impact and the savings this will have on their projects, the cost savings and all everything that come with it. When you see companies that are talking about they are seeing buying license for software as a big expense. A company that cannot even buy license to design a house. And talking about so you live in a conservative, even if you create the best products and then you are operating in an environment that does not have what it takes to make use of those products, or let's even talk about the government. You're talking about creating policy that does not even encourage startups to progress. So these are the issues. You're talking about if I have the best idea now and I want to really build such a, I probably look for something and have an exit plan that maybe tomorrow Siemens or Autodex will purchase it. And then I'll
Mm,
not die in the process. I'll not die in the process of trying to create the best because at the end of the day, it's still business, really. The business is about
yeah,
being profitable as a business. And if
yeah,
you're not profitable as a business, you will die as
yeah,
a business. So
collapse.
so that is basically the whole. It's not really about having the best solutions too. It's also the environment. And we as
I agree
professionals
with you.
we are too conservative. We are not even ready to spend even just to buy a software and design. Because at the end of the day,
Mm,
you cannot even charge clients if you are not using you are not buying software, you cannot charge professional fees for your designs. These are the issues we have in the industry that you see that it goes a long way. At the end of the day,
that's true.
when the tech industry come for us, we are nowhere, cannot compete with
Okay.
them. So I
All
think
right.
there's also a comment from here. Any suggestions on how great technology and design techniques can be taught in education?
How? On how?
It's, yeah, I think you can talk more on that. But I think
Uh,
basically from my own side, I would say we've talked
mm,
about how it boils back to the regulatory bodies and the NUC and the school system to integrate into curriculum. But maybe you have something else to say.
no, I agree. Exactly. That is one of the easiest ways to get it to be taught. Because once it can be uh, made mandatory within the curriculum, then through policies from the regulatory bodies, then you don't need to worry about which school you go into in Nigeria. Once you go into any school, uh, lecturers or the school system will have to find the ways to employ people that are competent enough to encourage students on green technology. And like we have rightly mentioned in this podcast, green technology does not always mean solar systems or sorry, PVC. I don't know. It doesn't mean what is always shown on TV. It exceeds
You have
it.
to import from another country into the country.
No, exactly. So yeah, I think that the easiest way is to pass all the bureaucracy is to have ACON or NUC make it a prerequisite.
Yes. So I think we'll have one last comment here.
Okay.
So from the same Ahmed Mumin. Say also, how can we provide an incentive for organizations to implement green technology away from the global warming narrative? So, in this case, it boils back to the economy, really. I'm sure that the likes of China, the likes of US, they have all those kind of incentives where at least people they are kind of incentivized to make their buildings LED certified and all those things. When you're building LED certified, there's a recognition and reward that comes with it. When Nigeria, I just believe that our conservativeness or conservation, it spans across every sector. It's not just the build sector, both the government and everything. So the from my own point of view, the incentive is supposed to come from at least from the policymakers, the government. But that doesn't mean that as professionals we shouldn't take charge and do what and do the right thing, at least to preserve our profession from becoming obsolete in the long run. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
The only thing I would say, in contrary to what you've said, is that I don't like incentives, especially if you are doing the right thing. The reason is because, in fact, it's incentives that got us to where all this green hype is right now, where people would just, there are buildings that they design bicycle racks just to get LEED certification, but nobody uses bicycle around the neighborhood. And so the whole space was wasted. So I think what we should just clamor for, like we've been discussing, is on doing what is right and what is good for the market. Because if you do that, then the market will respond with proper incentives. I think that is just the easiest way to go. Unfortunately, like you said, the market here in our country sometimes can be very, very nonchalant, especially even with the professionals doing such, or those organizations doing that. So, but it's two ways. The fact that you'll be doing it will make you stand out, even though it's going to be difficult to get into the market, but your jobs will now be standout jobs, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Well, also to chip in a bit on that, it's just that even access to fund too, because to be honest, as a company, if you are doing the right thing, you are doing the right thing, and you don't have enough fund to back up. There's this thing that comes with process. You need to endure through the process for you to become really established and be known for something. So if you are doing the right thing, and perhaps that right thing costs you more to do, and then you don't, at least the ecosystem will have the access to fund there, especially for construction industry.
Mhm.
If you are going for all these startup programs and you are talking IT, you probably get an investor. The moment you start talking about construction, all this thing, they will just start looking at you. You want to waste my money and to
Okay,
stuff like that. So access to fund too will also help in the long way. So which is where I was talking about government and that. But yeah,
that's cool.
these are things that just have to be done. And we need to just find ways to really innovate more around it.
Okay.
Yeah, so the last one, yeah, this is not really a question. Say absolutely the ecosystem is pertinent. Yeah. So okay, at this point I can't see any other question. I think we also even exhausted our time. We spent close to an hour on this session. So
Okay.
it's great to have everyone here. I think before we round up, as a lecturer, I don't know if you have any other thing to, especially maybe some of your students might have tuned into this session. I don't know if you have any advice for them, especially the ones that are still coming out, that are preparing. What advice will you give a typical student to prepare himself for the industry? Yes, yeah.
Well, the industry, it's a long journey. So what I would advise any student is unlike other professions where you just come out of school and become uh, um, I would say become almost like a boss or independent. In architecture, when you come out of school, you just discover that your training starts. So while you're at school, do all the best you can to make sure that you learn a lot. But when you come out from school, actually, that's where the real learning begins. So I would advise them to study hard, and I advise them to prepare to develop much more outside of school than in school. Those architects that stop learning in school, what happens is that the industry overtakes them and they are backward. So if you look at any architect that is making waves today or that is trying to do anything, just be rest assured that that person is learning every day on the job and has an open mind to keep learning. So that's just it.
Yeah, so thank you very much. It's been a great session, and it's an honor to have you to share your experience and your ideas and opinions. So also look
Thank
forward to
you too.
having you in subsequent episodes. And for everybody that also tuned in, there are so many activities going on online today, and you choose to be here today. So we're also grateful to have you here today. And so we do this every 2 weeks. So hopefully in the next 2 weeks, we also have another thought leader or another stakeholder in industry share their ideas with us. So we hope to see you. Always communicate to everyone. And also, this bi-weekly session has a newsletter, LinkedIn newsletter. So if you visit my profile, there's a newsletter I launched about 2 weeks ago. So I always communicate on the next. So you can just subscribe to that newsletter. I always communicate on the next session, what we have. I always create events for it. So thank you all for tuning into this session. Hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Have a nice day, everyone.
yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay.